Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 85. We're going to talk about The Rider of the Skulls from 1965. I rented this from Scarecrow Video and added a fan subtitle file. I had not seen this before. As always, we start with a prominent crew and cast. This film was written and directed by Alfredo Salazar. No information on the makeup or special effects crew. We have discussed Alfredo Salazar before as the writer of The Man and the Monster from 1959. This is the first film that he directed. The cast includes Dagoberto Rodriguez as El Charro de la Calaveras, Fernando Osis as El Charro de la Calaveras, uncredited, David Silva as Luis Salvatierra, Alicius Caro as Lupe Salvatierra, Pascual Garcia Pena as Cleofas, Alfonso Ortiz as Perico, Margot Wagner as Andra La Bruja, uncredited. This was a real professional pros cast of Mexican actors with hundreds of film appearances between them. Unfortunately, I don't speak or read Spanish, so I can't get information about any of them. If any of you know anything, let me know in the comments below. I get the impression that these people worked on a lot of movies. They're good at their job. Now, let's be clear. This is a film made in the 60s that feels like an even older serial. It's hard to track down in English. It is simple and melodramatic, but it's also fun. It reminds me of childhood. So yeah, I recommend it if you can get a hold of it. Now I'm going to cover the synopsis for the opening third of the film that deals with the werewolf. I won't deal with the later 2/3. El Hombre Lobo kills a farmer carrying wood. The Rider of the Skulls finds the victim. An old woman cackles. A boy named Perico has been ill since he saw the monster. The Rider checks in on the boy and stays with his family. The villagers are terrified. The boy's dad, Don Luis, the local hacienda jefe, is frustrated with the superstitious workers. The werewolf sneaks into Perico's room on the next full moon. The Rider of the Skull chases the monster from victim to victim, always one step behind. A young girl is killed. The family's servant, Cleofas, is scared by a cat so badly that he literally passes out. Don Luis is finally convinced to get his people out of there. The Rider of the Skulls is Mexican Batman, who is American Zorro. He saw his parents killed and swore to avenge them and spend his life fighting evil. He has become a living symbol of justice with no face. We finally see the werewolf in human form, and it's Don Luis, cursing his fate and then transforming. It's a neat twist using an old technique that we'll talk about more in detail later. Perico can't sleep, so he goes to help the Rider, who shoots El Hombre Lobo. The werewolf staggers back home and transforms into his human form. The Rider is an expert on werewolves. The old woman is a bruja named Andra. She raises one of the victims from the dead, who tells the Rider the details of their death. The victim and Andra tell the Rider that the werewolf is Don Luis. We already knew that. The Rider pumps the werewolf full of bullets, but is tricked into a pit trap. The werewolf throws huge stones down at the Rider, but the Rider isn't defenseless. He sticks the werewolf with his trusty throwing knife. The werewolf flees home and kills his wife before the Rider can escape the pit and pursue him. The Rider adopts Perico and Cleofas, so now he's got his own Alfred and Robin sidekicks. The Rider and the werewolf end in a literal fistfight in a gully. Things aren't looking good for the Rider when Perico rushes in and bashes El Hombre Lobo with a rock. The werewolf chases after the boy but slips and falls off a cliff to his death. The Rider reveals his face to his new sidekicks and they head off to fight a vampire and a headless horseman. I must acknowledge this transformation technique was already dated when this film was made. It's a simple dissolve. What makes it neat is that rather than dissolve through a lot of makeup stages, getting more or less hairy, El Hombre Lobo dissolves into a skeleton and then straight to the final form. It solves a really old problem of the actor having to hold ridiculously still and hit exactly the same pose between each shot. The skeleton serves as an intermediary jump. Now, it doesn't explain where the werewolf's clothes go during the metamorphosis or why they come back, but I do think that it is a brilliant way to solve an old issue, and I really appreciated it. Now, this film has perhaps the most simple, core, foundational werewolf lore. Don Luis changes into El Hombre Lobo under the effects of the moon. He's a mindless killer in that form. He doesn't remember who he becomes or what he does in his lycanthropic form. No mention of silver weakness, and he's killed by a simple fall, so he has no supernatural resilience. I mentioned Batman and Zorro, so let's talk about the wealthy brooding archetype. I couldn't find any other instances of the Rider of the Skulls in other films or media, so I don't think that he's an ongoing character. he does fit very neatly into the archetype of the wealthy brooding vigilante, which dates back centuries in folklore and literature. It's truly coalesced into an iconic modern mythos through characters like Zorro and Batman. Tracing the evolution of this character type reveals not just cultural shifts in perceptions of justice and morality, but speaks to the enduring appeal of the anti-hero crusader grappling with their own inner darkness. Now, the historical figure most often associated with the Zorro character is Joaquin Murrieta, whose life was fictionalized in an 1854 dime novel by John Rollin Ridge. In the 1998 film The Mask of Zorro, Murrieta's fictional brother Alejandro succeeds Diego as Zorro. As a hero with a secret identity who taunts his foes by signing his deeds, Zorro finds a direct literary predecessor in Sir Percival Blakeney, hero of the Scarlet Pimpernel pulp series by Emma Orczy. The character recalls other figures such as Robin Hood, Solomon Pico, and Tiburcio Vasquez. Another possible historical inspiration is William Lamport, an Irish soldier who lived in Mexico in the 17th century. Like Sir Percy in The Scarlet Pimpernel, Don Diego avoids suspicion by playing the role of an effete dandy who wears lace, writes poetry, and shuns violence. The all-black Fairbanks film costume, which, with variations, has remained the standard costume for the character, was likely adapted from the Arrow serial film's character, the Masked Rider, in 1919. This character was the first Mexican black-clad masked rider on a black horse to appear on the silver screen. Fairbanks' costume in The Mask of Zorro, released the following year, resembled that of the rider with only slight differences in the mask and the hat. When Johnston McCulley's rogue hero Diego de la Vega first appeared as Zorro in 1919, he established several conventions: a masked dual identity, a strict moral code of nonviolence, and taking the law into his own hands to battle injustice through intimidation and psychological warfare. Now, Zorro's popularity spawned imitators and embellishments across pulp fiction, film serials, and comic books throughout the 20th century. Characters like the Shadow and the Spider laid important groundwork for the anti-hero crime-fighting motif. But it was the introduction of Batman in 1939 that truly codified the Grim Avenger archetype in its most indelible Gothic form. Bob Kane's creations synthesized Zorro's aristocratic riches, secret identity, and pursuit of justice by fear tactics, with the gritty urban ambiance of pulp crime fighters and noir detectives. Batman's origins in personal psychological trauma rather than simple roguish rebellion added a compelling depth. He walked a thin line between heroism and disturbing compulsions, utilizing brutal methods and interrogations in his war on crime. At its core, characters like Zorro and Batman represent a primal cultural power fantasy, the nobly intentioned, obsessive loner combating injustice through extreme methods that the system just cannot. This archetype's emergence and evolution allows each era to project its unique moral perspectives on justice, authority, and the price of pursuing virtue beyond traditional boundaries. These characters continually interrogate whether the ends can ever truly justify the means. Their enduring popularity speaks to society's perpetual anxieties over the seductive yet perilous moral absolutism that they represent. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf from 1988. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.